evening and welcome to the Lower Hudson Special Education Task Force program, creating a circle of mental health supports for students with special needs, school staff, and families. My name is Julie Passman and I co-chair this regional task force along with Jessica Bauman, who's here tonight. And we also have some other task force executive council members. Alyssa Galea is managing the Zoom, and we have Marion Walsh here as well. Before we get started, I want to mention that attendees can turn on closed captioning by clicking the closed captioning button at the bottom of the screen. You can then select Show Subtitle, which will show the closed captioning as subtitles on the screen, or View Full Transcript, which will show a chat box with all of the closed captioning. I also need to share a notice of recording. This training will be recorded to ensure the information will be available to all who are interested. If you do not wish to have your image appear on the recording, please turn off your video. If you do not wish your name to appear on the recording, please change your name by clicking the three dots, which is generally at the bottom of the screen, selecting Participants, hover over your name, select More, then Rename to something that would not identify you. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Lower Hudson Special Education Task Force, we are the regional arm of the New York State Special Education Task Force, which is run under the auspices of Disabilities Rights New York. The Lower Hudson Special Education Task Force seeks to bring together constituents from all across the spectrum of people who are interested in positive outcomes for students with special needs. We get together in forums like this one tonight to exchange ideas, learn about current trends in special education, all with a focus on improving outcomes for students with special needs. Our constituents include parents, teachers, lawyers, advocates, related service providers, administrators, students with disabilities, and many others who care deeply about students with special needs. So in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, which is May, the Lower Hudson Special Education Task Force is dedicating this evening's program to expanding awareness of mental health challenges faced by students with special needs, as well as awareness of the needs of those people who support students. COVID-19 has had a profound effect on many of us, especially on our mental health. By creating circles of mental health supports, an array of mental health resources, we hope that people suffering from emotional challenges will receive the care and understanding that they need and deserve. You're so fortunate to have with us tonight two highly knowledgeable panelists. They are Andrew Ecker and Marie Considine. Dr. Andrew Ecker is coordinator of the Guidance and Child Studies Center at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. His prior work includes special education school improvement roles, director and teacher at a therapeutic residential high school, adjunct graduate professor, and professional basketball player. He has authored multiple peer-reviewed articles and presented nationally on best practices in multi-tiered systems of support, school mental health, and special education. Dr. Ecker is a member of multiple local and statewide mental health committees and task forces. Marie Considine is the executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI Westchester, Inc., having previously served as director of development and walk manager. Marie has more than 20 years experience in the nonprofit sector and a master's degree in public administration from Pace University's Graduate School. So welcome to our two panelists. We have structured tonight's program by collecting a series of questions that we have developed, and some registrants also offered these questions. In addition, you may type into the chat box if you have questions, and we have a packed program, but time permitting, we will have Alyssa read aloud the questions that are in the chat box. We just ask that if you are putting a question in the chat box, that you try to avoid elaborate personal fact patterns and craft your questions so they will be applicable to everyone here tonight. So with that, I turn it over to Marion Walsh.
Hello, welcome everyone, and thank you, Julie, for the wonderful introduction. Thank you for our panelists. And I just had a few reminders. Our panelists do have impressive credentials, and I just wanted to remind everyone we are not therapists or clinicians in this capacity, and so just please remember that there's a lot of difficult situations we'll be talking about, so please consult your own mental health provider if there's anything for you or your child you need to discuss. Also, just kind of a warning, we will be talking about some very difficult topics here on suicide prevention because it is very important to speak about. And just a reminder that the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is available 24 hours a day. If you or a loved one, your child is feeling suicidal, 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273, that's TALK, T-A-L-K. So I just wanted to say that I'm delighted to be here. I'm on the board of NAMI and an attorney on the task force. So I'll turn it now back to Julie. Or am I going now, Julie? I'm going straight into it, right? Is that okay? Sorry. So I'm going to start with our questions. We have these divided up into questions about school and generally, then about teachers support, then parent support. Then we have most of the program focused on support for students. So these two are really devoted to Dr. Ecker. To Andrew, you could unmute if you don't mind when you, okay. So the first question is, generally, what are schools and school districts doing for mental health and social emotional wellness in the school setting?
Thanks so much, Marion. Thanks everyone for being here. I hope that everyone is healthy, is safe and well, and that we can all take a deep breath. We are here. We have this time together, and I'm really grateful and appreciative for that. I think to talk about what's happening broadly across schools, it's helpful to think about the general context, the context of the last year plus around COVID, even going back a bit before that. Even prior to COVID in the last few years, we know that we are really at crisis levels around mental health, and that this has been a really important topic to our community and certainly to our schools. So there have been tremendous efforts underway across the board from everyone. I think that, as we know, the pandemic exacerbated many of these challenges, not just in mental health, but also with other challenges in our communities, including things like hate crimes and social justice matters and other challenges that have really come up. So everything that I'm framing, I think, is best through a broad lens, but also one that's culturally responsive. And through our New York State Education Department, we have a framework for this, and that's our culturally responsive sustaining education framework. The first part of which is a welcoming and affirming environment, so that every child, every adult, every family member is safe, is welcomed, and is included in their school. And this part of the culturally responsive sustaining education framework, I think, goes a long way in laying the foundation for mental health in schools. Because when you have a welcoming and affirming environment for all students, for all staff, for all family members, that can be the foundation of the positive relationships that are so important. We know how critical it is for kids to have a trusted adult, so that if and when they are struggling, that they know who they can go to, whether it's a peer or an adult, and those positive relationships are so critically important. So I think that what we see from schools right now, especially as more and more students return to in-person learning, is really focusing on positive relationships with peers, among staff, and that every student and every staff knows that they're cared for, respected, and that there are trusted adults there. I think that, of course, we're always working towards culturally responsive and also trauma responsive schools and practices. And there are 3 pillars of trauma-informed care that you might see in schools, and they might have different names, so always you can ask, but we're typically looking at things around connectedness, safety, and self-regulation. And those are really important things for students, but also for all of us as adults as well, so that if we are struggling, we know that we are connected in an important way to others around us who care for us, that we are physically safe in this moment as well as psychologically safe, and that we can self-regulate. We know that these are 3 critical pillars of trauma-informed care. In terms of what you might see in school, whether it is through a social emotional learning curriculum or through positive behavioral intervention supports, you probably see a lot of work focusing on wellness for all, ensuring the wellness of all students, of all families, and of all staff. We certainly focus on mental health literacy, including knowing how to get help and how to help someone else if they are in a crisis, including peers. As I mentioned, we're also, there's various social emotional learning curriculum, and there's crisis preparedness that folks know what to do if there is a problem. But I think that the most important thing that we would see focusing on now are really the welcoming and the affirming environments, the positive relationships, and then as needed, there are additional supports that are added on for kids who might be struggling in a certain area.
Thank you, Andrew. So great. That's great. These are great groundwork for us to kind of work off of. And one question that comes up a lot is how can we all counter lingering stigma associated with mental health challenges? Okay. I don't know if Marie or Andrew want to answer that. Either one is fine. Marie, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Thanks, Marion. Hi, everyone. So this year especially, we at NAMI Westchester have been able to enter classrooms, middle schools and high schools throughout the county to offer our Ending the Silence program. So that is a mental health education program for young people, middle school and high school. And we've always done it in person until this past year, until about, a little longer ago than a year ago. March of last year, we decided to make everything virtual as soon as schools were ready. And that's a presentation program where two people speak about personal experiences and go through a PowerPoint presentation that really is an education for students. So we've been getting more and more calls from schools, which is wonderful because education needs to get out there. And as Andrew said, kids and anyone needs to feel connected. So in the past year, with social distancing and everything kind of been taken away, no sports, no movies, no social anything, being connected is really important. So in that program, young people are taught what the warning signs are, and we'll probably talk about that later this evening. Warning signs of a mental health condition, warning signs of suicide, and how to identify a trusted adult. So what schools have done is not only bring us in for those programs, but also made sure that eyes were on the students during the presentation program, because it's easy when you're in a classroom to see if a student is getting triggered, is having a reaction to some of the material. But when you're on a platform like this, and if kids have their cameras off, especially, something may be missed. So someone really needs to keep an eye on. So we had those conversations with the school districts before going virtual. So the school psychologist would know what the presentation was about, social worker, teacher, and one of those three would always keep an eye on the students during the presentation. And then one of those three people would be available at a moment's notice if someone were expressing some kind of dissatisfaction or upset with the material. So those are, new ways that we've had to kind of change what we do, but we're reaching more and more students this way. We're even offering programs in colleges. So it's good. So there's a lot more education out there than there have been in the past.
That's great. No, that's wonderful to hear. And I've been an Ending the Silence presenter. It's a wonderful program from NAMI Westchester. So school districts can reach out to NAMI Westchester for that support and education. I'm going to turn it over to Julie now to ask some questions about how to get support for teachers. Okay.
Yeah, so we do want to focus on teachers, both the ways in which teachers can help students who are struggling and the ways teachers can help themselves if they feel like they're struggling with mental health issues. So Andrew, I'd like to ask you where a teacher can find education or training or resources to help them support students who are struggling in the classroom. And this would refer to students who have been identified as having disabilities and those who maybe it's new for them to have a struggle with mental health.
Sure. So first, last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, but that is certainly something that we can celebrate every day, and we can celebrate and honor our teachers as well as everyone who's been playing the role of a teacher this year. When it comes to supporting our teachers through different professional learning, I'm really proud of our work at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES across our professional learning division, where we, I think, really embed mental health and social emotional wellness into all different areas that we may cover. So my work is primarily in the direct mental health area, supporting school clinicians, but whether it's school administrators or teachers, or even areas like art and science, social emotional wellness and learning is part of all those things. So we are here for all teachers, for all school staff, so that we can meet their needs. And I'm happy to share some of the resources that we have that can meet the needs of teachers and those who are supporting kids who might be struggling.
Okay, so BOCES would be one of those important resources for teachers. So now just turning the focus back onto teachers themselves and their wellness, where can teachers find support when they are feeling overwhelmed by the demands of teaching, responding to parent emails, which may be more frequent during COVID, and any other stresses that they're experiencing?
Yeah, so right now, I just want to share a resource that is certainly available for teachers, but is also available for everyone, and that is New York Project Hope. And this is an emotional support line. It is crisis counseling response that is free for everyone. It is funded through SAMHSA and through FEMA, and it is here to help all of us recover from challenging effects of COVID-19. So this website, New York Project Hope, as well as the various phone numbers are available for everyone to call if they are having challenges. Also for teachers, it's always great to visit your EAP, the employee assistance programs that might be available through the district. But regardless of the extent to which you might be struggling, I think it's really important to always, thank you, Alyssa, for putting that in the chat, to always reach out. It's always okay to talk to someone. There's no issue that might be too small, and it's always good to talk to someone. So these supports are available for teachers. And New York Project Hope, it's not just available for counseling, but it's also available for schools. They can come in and lead trainings. They have informational sessions that are available. And we have many great local partners who are participating in this. So I highly recommend that for all folks, whether you are in the classroom, in a school role, or just looking for support for yourself or for a loved one.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Those resources are really important, especially Project Hope. And so just to sort of piggyback on that, are there any general strategies for teachers, both during this difficult period of COVID and as we transition back to some new normal? Are there any strategies that you would suggest for teachers who are just trying to manage their own wellness?
Yeah, I think we need to acknowledge a few things and give ourselves permission to, to say that we're overwhelmed sometimes. And, we know that burnout is real, and that these stressors that we have in our lives can impact us negatively. So I'll go back to these 3 pillars of trauma-informed care around connectedness, safety, and self-regulation. So for teachers or for anyone who's experiencing increased stress, can we stay connected and have some check-in times with colleagues or with friends or with family or loved ones, whether it's by phone, if we're able to take a walk or see someone, or Zoom, but just to really stay connected with those who are important to us, I think is a really critical part of self-care. The second piece is around safety again, knowing that we are physically safe, staying safe, psychologically, and feeling safe in the spaces that we are in. And then lastly, to self-regulate. Hopefully we are in a place where we feel that we are in control. And if we feel that things are getting out of control, that we can practice some deep breathing strategies or mindfulness or other things that can allow us to regain that control and to self-regulate our own emotions. I go back to the permissions that we need to allow ourselves. The permission to be kind to ourselves, to turn off when we need to, whether it's to stop emailing or just to take a break or to walk away from something. I think about what the flight attendant would say on an airplane, which is that we need to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can help others. We need to be well in order to help others, and especially in the difficult role of teaching and helping kids and all the various challenges that they might have. I think your own self-care is truly important.
Thank you. I really think you can't hear those words of guidance enough. It's really helpful to hear them tonight. Marion, I'm going to let you address some questions regarding parents and parent wellness.
Yes, and speaking of feeling overwhelmed, this has been obviously a very difficult year for parents, particularly K-12, and for parents of college students and young adults. So I'll direct this to Marie. first, what supports are available either from the school and from the community to help parents help their children with any mental health concerns?
Right. So there are great resources in Westchester. You know, Westchester is really the model in the state for the amount of mental health resources that we have. So as Andrew mentioned, Project Hope is available for parents, of course, because it's available for everyone. The Ending the Silence program that I mentioned earlier that teaches young people how to take care of their mental health, what to look for. We also have a complementary program called Ending the Silence for Parents, and also one for Ending the Silence for school staff. So those are really aimed at taking care of the younger person. You know, if you're teaching school staff, you're really teaching them what to look for in the students. Ending the Silence for Parents is teaching them as parents. But it also has the domino effect, because if you're learning warning signs about what to look for in someone else, then you'll be more conscious to look for them in yourselves. And I know I've mentioned warning signs a couple of times, so I'll just mention a few of them. Let's say, you know, in the past year, there have been times that probably almost all of us have been sad, right, or withdrawn, really not feeling good, not happy about all the social engagements that haven't happened, maybe loss of jobs, loss of parents, etc. But there's a difference between being a little sad about what's going on and just being completely immersed in sadness and being withdrawn. So if that goes on for a period of time, let's say about 2 weeks, then that's a red flag. That's a warning sign to get help, whether it's for, you know, speaking of parents, whether it's for your child or for your co-parent or for yourself, because this has been a very traumatic year. So people are really struggling, but there is a lot of help out there. Some of the other signs are, you know, out of control or risk-taking behaviors. A lot of high school kids have done some things in the past year to entertain themselves that they haven't tried before. You know, there's been an increase in substance use. So that's something that, you know, to watch out for too, if it's happening in your child or if it's happening for yourself as a parent, because not only are parents struggling with how to take care of their kids who are struggling based on working remotely, loss of all the things I talked about before, but also the parents are the ones who are struggling with working from home and helping their children and maybe helping their parents, maybe not being able to bury a loved one properly. All the different stresses that have come into play can really affect your mental health. So if there's been a big increase in substance abuse or substance use, that's a big red flag. You know, in the beginning of the pandemic, it was kind of a joke. You'd see photos on social media of very full recycle bins full of, you know, wine bottles and beer bottles and that kind of thing. But as this went on, you know, for a year, it's become more of a problem. So that's something to look out for too. And the last one I'll mention is just intense worries or fears that really get in the way of your daily activities. So it's normal to worry about your kids, about your job, about different things. But if it's really impacting your daily life, then that's really a red flag too. So in terms of what supports can parents get, look into therapy. There's absolutely no shame in that. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're trying to do, is erase the stigma. And that's maybe the one of the few silver linings that have come out of the pandemic, is people are talking about mental health, people are getting help. And then some of the other self-care ideas that Andrew talked about: get out, get away from the screen, get out of your house and get some fresh air. We all are kind of low on vitamin D probably at this point because we haven't been outside much, but now the weather's turning good and we need to get out and we need to get more connected. Those pillars that Andrew talked about are really, really important.
Marie, you answered most of my questions on my list, but I just wanted to ask, no, it's fine. No, I think it was really helpful to know where parents can find support for their own mental health. Let me ask you specifically what groups are available, what education through NAMI Westchester, and any events coming up, or anything else you want to mention about NAMI just for parents.
Sure.
Yeah.
Actually, this could be something for parents or for teachers, or really any audience, but we have a session coming up next Monday at 7 o'clock on Zoom, and it's a free session for journaling. So it's something that you may not have thought about doing in a while, and I certainly didn't. I'm a very literal writer. I'm really not a creative writer, but I participated in a journaling session a couple of months ago because I was thinking about, should we bring this to NAMI Westchester to do? And it was really out of my comfort zone. And it was just completely different. I got immersed in it, and I forgot about work, and I forgot about, my responsibilities at home and everything else. And it really channeled my energy and my focus on just doing one thing. And that was something that we as New Yorkers, and especially as parents, don't often do, is focus on one thing. I mean, you've always got your to-do list just circling and circling. And the gal who's going to run it for us works for NAMI New York State, and she's a real pro. And she had done it with North Salem High School, and that's the session that I sat in on. And we worked with North Salem High School to do our Ending the Silence program, and they have a wellness club. So if anyone's interested, you can contact us, namiwestchester.org. The information's on there. And even if you don't find it, you can just call the office and we can give you the info. Actually, I'll follow up on that other point. Earlier you asked what are schools doing, and Andrew gave a great answer as to what schools have been doing. I'll just add to that, May, as you mentioned earlier, is Mental Health Awareness Month. So thankfully this month, a lot of school districts around the county are doing wellness events. So one district, Croton Harmon High School, is making a whole wellness week next week. So what the high school health teacher has designed is that every day, Monday through Friday, between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m., there will be people walking the track. So whether it's during their health class, during their lunch class, and she's arranged it with every teacher in the school that on a schedule that she's devised, teachers will let their students out 10 minutes early, and they are to go walk the track, because it's bringing the wellness and the physical activity and the outdoors to them. But also once they even get to the track, we have a gigantic banner that's on the track that says Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's just those constant reminders that this is okay to talk about, and everyone has mental health, and there is no physical health without mental health. So that's just those reminders. And we've got banners and different things across the country, the county, not just about NAMI Westchester, but about Mental Health Awareness Month, and just get help somewhere. And WJCS is a great organization that's providing therapy. They've gotten some grant money to do therapy for college students. So there's some great opportunities there. A lot of therapy is, completely, this way, virtually right now. So there's a lot of help out there.
Thank you, Marie. It's very helpful. And I'm going to ask Julie now to talk about, we're going to focus now for the rest of the program about getting help for students. And of course, we're all still building the circle, but I'll turn it over to Julie now for questions.
Thank you, Marianne. So our next question is really this, it's this big pressing question that parents and adults really grapple with. How do you know when a child needs help or is having a mental health issue? Parents really struggle. When do you know that you need to get help for your child? Marie, if you want to start. Andrew, if you want to weigh in, that's fine too.
Sure. So I'll just start because I want to kind of also piggyback on something, Marie, that you were just saying that I think is so important in terms of even framing this conversation. Because when I think about Mental Health Awareness Month, getting rid of the stigma, it's really about mental health promotion and this really important idea that we all have mental health, and that we need to be able to talk about mental health in a positive, proactive way in order to have this conversation. Because I think that if we haven't discussed mental health yet, or if it's not something we've talked about as a family or as a school or as a community, and the first time that we're talking about it is when there's a challenge or something is flaring up that might be really difficult. That's like trying to talk about your physical health the first time you break your leg without any context for just what does my leg typically feel like, or what's a good way to help out a sprain or something like that. So I think that these conversations about mental health and about struggle, it's like so much happens in childhood and adolescence that could be concerning in the same way that you would ask, when do I know when to reach out? The same way I would think, your child and their physical well-being, so that when something is, not going right, who to contact, the help to get them. I think it's a lot has to do with the mental health piece as well. So I'll stop there and see if Marie wants to add to that, but I just really appreciate, Marie, what you were saying about mental health promotion and mental health awareness, because that part is so critical to even have the conversation about how we can distinguish between normal behavior and a serious mental health concern if there is no baseline, if we don't have those open and honest conversations about mental health to start with.
You're right. I wholeheartedly agree. I'm also a merit badge counselor for Scouts. And one of the merit badges is called Family Life. And one of the things that Scouts have to do to work toward this Family Life merit badge is to plan a family meeting. So some of the kids who are working on this badge are 12 and some are 17. So it really runs, a wide range of how a kid can run a family meeting, and there's certain topics they have to discuss. And one of them is a family crisis. So the younger ones were kind of stumped on, what would a family crisis be? What am I supposed to talk to my family about? And we talked about different things, like what if your house had a fire? Do you know where your escape route, what your escape route is, and do you have fire extinguishers? But then also a mental health crisis. I brought that up. So, maybe they wouldn't have thought about that. And maybe I wouldn't have thought about it, 10 years ago, especially if I weren't working in this field. But there are lots of people who have reached out to me personally with their families struggling at work, but also personally. And I know that this is something that kids kind of need to be aware of. I mean, we teach them, again, through the Ending the Silence program, what to look for themselves and for their friends, but also the bigger picture. Kids can be aware of what's going on with their parents, just kind of watch them. And kids pick up on everything that parents do or say, or every reaction that they make. So even we talked about, if you notice something really different with your sibling, with your friend, with your parent, they're not getting out of bed for a week, they're sleeping a lot, if they're using substances, those are things that we need to kind of pick up on and do something about. And that's through the Ending the Silence program. They learn how to identify a trusted adult. So that's not always a parent. Like, for instance, if you think your parent's struggling, you may not go to the parent. You may need to go to somebody else, maybe a family member, maybe not, maybe a neighbor, maybe a friend's parent, maybe a babysitter. But this month, I don't think you can get too far in Westchester without seeing a sign, because the county has a big digital board at the county center where everybody's going for their vaccinations. We've got signs on Beeline buses. And then we at NAMI Westchester hold the biggest community awareness mental health event in the county. Normally we have 600 or 700 people going for a walk at Rytown Park and Playland. But this year it'll be virtual, but hybrid. We're going to do like a pickup parade, but we're going to have a DJ and we're going to have balloons and we're going to have somebody doing henna and refreshments. So schools are getting together, talking about mental health, talking about wellness, and participating in our walk as a way to connect. Like that first pillar that Andrew talked about is connect. And then there have been a lot of high schoolers that I know of who have started mental health clubs in their schools this year, which I think is amazing.
Thank you. I think it's so important, this idea of starting the conversation with children before there's a crisis. So you have that dialogue going. I think that was a really powerful point that you made. The next question sort of is an extension of this prior question. In the context of the pandemic, some adults may wonder whether a student's behavior is typical given the stressors of COVID, or is it a serious mental health concern? How would you distinguish between normal teen behavior in the context of this pandemic and a real mental health concern? I don't know, Andrew, do you want to start with that one?
Sure, thanks, Julie. So again, I'm going to go back to what Marie sort of alluded to in the 2 weeks, part. I think that if you know your child, if you know what typically works for them, if you know their habits, and that you see a disruption in any of those things that are impacting school, how they engage in relationships with family members, with friends who they typically associate with or hang out with, and just, the way that they carry out their life, their daily activities. If there's a disruption in there or something changes, talk with them, and they might be avoidant, but or it might be a difficult conversation, but we can't shy away from those conversations because they probably have a lot of insight into that. So I would say the first time that you notice it is the right time to talk about it, even though that might be difficult. There are certainly signs that you might see in, the cognitive side and their emotional side, the behavior and other areas. But I would say that as, parents and family members who are in the house probably now more than ever with kids, you're going to be the one who sees it first, and also, the peers. And that's something that Marie talked about, that there are high schoolers and other youth who are, working together to support each other so that when folks are struggling, that they know the resources that are out there. So I'll go back to just saying that, the first time you think that there might be an issue, we don't need to wait for there to be a diagnosable disorder for us to get help. So the first time that you think something might be going on or is irregular, let's have a conversation, talk, and then seek out resources appropriately. And if there is something going on in the home, it's always good to communicate with your school too, to let the teachers know, or the school psychologist or building principal, because they might be seeing something as well. And the same thing goes for schools. They always want to communicate with the families. So I'd say to keep the lines of a communication open, and to always reassure kids that that you are there for them, even if they're not ready to talk. Then that's always an opportunity to let them know that you are there for them, and that anytime that they need you, that they can come and talk to you.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And the next question really focuses more on, once the caring adult identifies that the student really needs help, where does that adult, if it's a parent, do they speak to the school? Should they seek, where can they find a therapist, or where can parents or teachers refer students for support groups? Marie, do you want to start with that? Andrew, you can weigh in as well.
Sure. So if it's a teacher who's noticing some changes, often they'll go to the counselor, to the school psychologist or the counselor, and start there. And because teachers will often notice some changes that even parents might not pick up on, because sometimes it's really hard. I remember being a teenager and my music taste changed. That's one of the kind of the warning signs, big changes. Did your music taste completely change? Well, mine did when I was about 14. So you kind of have to it's kind of very hard to figure out, is it a change because they're growing and they're changing? And are they changing friends because they're anxious? Are they changing friends because they want to go with a different group? Or are they changing friends just because they've outgrown their other group? It's very hard to figure that out. And sometimes we do need to call in additional help. And there's no problem in that. I mean, one of the places to start is to look at your health insurance. If you have health insurance, look and see who's covered. I know that many therapists do have waiting lists right now, but some very good ones don't. And especially doing it virtually, they can squeeze more into their day. So definitely start there. We have a helpline. You can always call NAMI Westchester's helpline, 592-5458, and we can help you figure that out. The Westchester County Department of Community Mental Health has a great website too. So that's a good place to call and get some help. But also, one of the things I mentioned earlier was identifying, it's 592-5458. I might have said that wrong. Thanks, Alyssa. One of the things I mentioned was identifying a trusted adult. So that relates to the kids, trying to identify a trusted adult, but also think through, are you that trusted adult for your child? And if you don't think that you are, then maybe your partner is, or maybe your best friend is, or maybe another parent is. So it's okay to not be the be all and the end all for your kids, but you have to be able to know where and how to get help for them, whether it's a therapist, a psychiatrist, a school counselor. They are trained and they work with kids every day. So do not be embarrassed. they know what to do and they know the resources that are available. So those are some good places to start.
Thank you, Marie. So the next question is really in the context of COVID. A lot of this for students who were studying remotely or in hybrid, some of them developed these more nocturnal habits. And now as we're moving towards most students transitioning back to traditional in-person learning, parents and adults may need to help students transition back. Some students may be anxious about returning to those more traditional routines. How can parents help students transition back and maybe move away from some of these nocturnal behaviors, or whether more time in front of the screen? How can we support students that may feel stressed during this time of transition?
So I think this is really important. As you asked that question, I'm just thinking about myself too, and maybe some changes I've experienced over the last 14 months of, different hours of the day or too much screen time or whatever. So wow, I think it's really important when we think about changing routines or anything like that to think about why we were in them in the first place. To think about the function of that behavior. And to, again, go back to know your child and like why they were doing that, because chances are it worked for them for a reason. So if we're going to change a behavior or try to modify a behavior, I would definitely want to know why we were engaging in that behavior in the first place. So let's say that, the child was staying up until 4 in the morning. I'd want to know like why they were doing that. Like maybe because between 12 and 4, that was sort of the time during, the pandemic where they had the most autonomy, where they were sort of alone and they could express themselves. Or maybe that's when they could connect with their friends, because that's just when everyone else was online or, playing a game or something like that. So I would definitely want to know why, so that we can try to maintain some of what they were getting out of it while trying to build a new habit or shape some of that new behavior. If it was around connectedness or autonomy, maybe there's a way that we can replace that by saying that, that might have worked for a time. There's nothing wrong with that. You can even use some examples that you might have yourself, and, maybe something as like a family we could try to do where, at 9 o'clock, we're all going to put our phones away, or, we're all going to turn the screens off and we're all going to try to go to bed very early on a Sunday night or something like that, but just something that kind of gets everyone in it so that, kids and especially adolescents don't feel like something is being taken away from them, because that autonomy is so important. If kids continue to struggle, then, I think you can look into more individualized things, but I think it's always helpful just to start with the function to see like what was working for them, because they probably have some insights into that as well.
Thank you. Yes, that makes a lot of sense to start there. We had a good question from one of the registrants who asked, for kids who do well in school but decompensate behaviorally at home, what supports can IEPs include, or individualized education programs include, to support students? Andrew, do you want to?
Yeah, so this is, I think, really important thing, gets to the communication and like the lines of communication. So given that the question is starting from a place of the child has an IEP, I would love to know what's working in school, so that I, as a parent or family member or someone who's supporting a child at home, I can maybe generalize those strategies. So I would definitely just want to know more information about if things are going great in school. That's great. I just want to know about what is it? What are the conditions or the practices or the situations that make it work well in school, so that I can learn more about that and maybe implement those things at home.
Yeah, I would also just try to find out, since it's going well at school and then they're kind of, sounds like they're letting their hair down at home, are they holding all their emotions in while they're at school, which is then creating more stress and more anxiety, and then just, letting it all out when they walk in the door at home. Like you throw off your jacket, you throw off your shoes, you let your hair down and you're your own real self. But if that's the case, then even though school seems to be going really well, maybe they're all bottled up and then they need some help.
Right. So maybe so what I heard from Andrew was that communication piece with the school, and maybe working with the Committee on Special Education to get some counseling on that IEP. The school may not know unless the parents communicate with the school.
Sure.
Thank you both.
I'll just go back on the IEP part, just to starting with the student at the center and with their strengths. Marie, I totally agree with what you said, that maybe it's not going so well at school, but either way, that the students at the center of that conversation to the greatest extent possible, and that they have greatest knowledge of themselves, of their strengths, of their interests, of their goals, and at all times to keep the child and their voice at the center of that.
Yeah, good point. For sure.
Thank you both. At this point, we have some really critical questions that we saved for the end. I'm going to turn it over to Marion to lead this discussion.
Right. Yeah. So these are some. I want to start with the really important critical questions. Move down a little bit because I want to make sure we get to those. These have to do with self-harm and suicide ideation. I'm sorry. So I'm going to ask both Andrew and Marie, whoever wants to jump in first, but what can I do if my child or my student in class is threatening self-harm or suicide? What should I do, I guess?
Well, in class, you mean if you're,
Well, we can start with, let's start with maybe home, and then we'll go to maybe Andrew can talk about what happens in school. If you want to talk about the home part, that's fine. I understand it's different, right?
Sure. I'm just thinking, so if you're a parent and this is a child who's threatening suicide, you need to really have that conversation. Don't ignore it. If they're saying that word, it's on their mind. So definitely find out if it's something that they're really thinking about, and don't leave them alone. Don't just kind of brush it aside. We've had a speaker named Kevin Hines, who was one of 2 survivors off of a jump from the Golden Gate Bridge. And then he said that right when he jumped, the first thing he thought was, oh no, I shouldn't have done this. So thankfully he lived, and he's here to tell the tale, and he's an amazing mental health advocate. You can just Google Kevin Hines, Hines. But he said that if he had been asked that question by his parent that morning, who he was with, then he may not have attempted it. He really was trying to call out for help. His dad knew he was in distress, but not to the extent where he was. So he's a very, very strong advocate. And I believe in that too, is that pick up on anything. Last week my child was struggling and really acting out, and I had a meeting that I needed to be at work. And I thought, I'm gonna miss that meeting because I don't know what's happening with my child right now. I need to sit down and have a conversation like the one Marion is kind of proposing. It wasn't threatening suicide, but completely acting out of character. And I didn't know what was going on. So you just really need to not leave them alone and have a conversation about what's happening, and then decide where to go from there. Do you need to bring in a professional or which way you're going? But I know Andrew has some good advice, I'm sure.
Yeah, and if you think it's an actual threat of suicide, I guess you wouldn't hesitate to call. You would call 911. Yeah, I guess,
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Andrew, do you want to jump in on that? And you can start with both parents and teachers if you want.
Yeah, so I certainly agree with everything Marie said there. I think a really important thing that I've learned from youth mental health first aid, which is a suicide prevention curriculum that we teach and implement both in schools and in our communities, that you can always ask someone if they're thinking about hurting themselves or if they're thinking about suicide. It is not something that if you ask someone, you will then put the idea into their head. It's just not how it works. So it's always the right thing to do to ask someone if they're okay. And through youth mental health first aid, there's an acronym that's part of the training that I just always refer to, which is the ALGE step. So it's ALGEE. The A is to assess for risk of suicide or harm. The L is to listen in a non-judgmental way. The G is to give reassurance and factual information. E is to encourage appropriate professional help. And then second E is to encourage self-help and other support strategies. So obviously that happens over a period of time. And there's a whole course that goes into teaching folks that. But certainly if in the moment there's a crisis, schools have crisis plans. If there's a real emergency in the moment, to always call 911. But again, I think the most important part is that it's always the right thing to talk to someone, to ask them, and to stay with them if you think that someone's really struggling.
Right, absolutely. And earlier, Marion also gave the suicide prevention lifeline, which is 1-800-273-TALK. Very soon, later this year, that will become a 3-digit number. It'll become 988, much easier to remember. And the good news actually about that is not only that it's a real easy short number to remember, but the 988 calls will be answered locally. For years, calls within Westchester to the suicide prevention lifeline have been answered by an organization in Long Island. Now this year, St. Vincent's Hospital in Harrison is taking that over. So the people who are answering those calls will know local resources and be able to really help even more so people who are in crisis, people who need help. There's also a national suicide prevention text line, which is 741-741. So anybody, lots of kids are more inclined to text than to talk or call. So when we give out little cards to the students, when we do our Ending the Silence program, it always has the text line number on there, 741-741. And you can just text the letters NAMI, N-A-M-I, when you text it to 741-741, and then you'd get somebody responding to you. I'm sure there are other words that you can text in, but that's the one that I know.
I would just add to that also that the Trevor Project has both phone, text, and website resources available for LGBTQ youth as well as for adults, and that happy to share those resources as well.
Good point.
No, thank you both for addressing that really critical issue, because it's so important to know, and as you pointed out, it's important to know in advance, as we do physical health aid for crises that are physical. You need to know first aid for mental health crises as well. And I think those apply to students also. Consider, if you're not sure, you would ask the question. Is that right, Marie? It would apply to both, right, to both situations. So we have just a few more minutes, but I'll just ask 1 or 2 more questions, and then I just wanted to make sure we got those critical questions included. This happens, I know probably more frequently than not, that if a child or student is resistant to receive counseling or other mental health supports, Maria, what steps should a parent take? Penny. Or Andrew, either one.
Oh, Andrew, you go first.
Yeah.
Sure. So I always go back to the why, and just I want to know more about it. I mean, there's certainly different things that might be cultural, other things that exist where there's trust issues across bureaucratic lines, or because of other political issues, or just cultural. So if my child is not comfortable speaking with me, I would try to ask them maybe if there is someone who they would be comfortable speaking with. Certainly let the school know, to see if there's someone in school who that child connects with, whether it's a coach or a teacher. Even if it's someone who's not a mental health clinician, that person could be the key link that helps the child to open up so that they can get the help from a appropriate clinical staff member.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's so important. We had one question come up this was from a registrant, and I guess it could be for Andrew. I think you mentioned this, so I'll direct it at you. Do you believe teachers should receive training in emotional regulation, support, and trauma-informed education, or educating?
Yes, absolutely. I think we all should. I think, but yes, I think specifically, for sure, we all, I think teachers do, always want to help all of their kids and do the best by them. So one of the important things is we come back to schools that we always want to know our kids, want to know their interests, their strengths, and we also want to know what challenges they might have, or what's happened to them in their past that might be impacting their learning. So for sure, I think that teachers should receive training in mental health support, but also for themselves as well, because we all need to be well, and I'll extend that from teachers just to all of us. And that's part of the mental health awareness piece, and to mental health literacy also.
Yes, no, thank you. So we're coming up on 8 o'clock and we could talk all night about this and there's so much to talk about, but you know, we all, and you know, this circle and this discussion is so important because mental health is about everyone. Everyone has mental health. Everyone has to, we all have to learn how to support each other and ourselves. So I'll let Julie and Jess close, but I thank you all for coming on this important topic. And I think Marie mentioned very briefly, we do have a NAMI Walks event coming up. That's a great event if you are interested more in learning about NAMI Westchester and mental health for all in Westchester. So, but Julie, I'll let you close and thank you all.
Thank you, Marion. I'm wondering, Alyssa, if we have any questions in the chat. We might have time for one to squeeze in a quick question.
No questions in the chat.
Okay, then I just want to thank, really profoundly thank Andrew and Marie, because I think tonight's program really helped us increase our awareness of mental health challenges and really encourage us to start this dialogue about mental health early, to have it be ongoing before we're facing a crisis. And the resources are terrific that both Andrew and Marie provided, so important. And I hope our participants had an opportunity to write them down. I think some of them are in the chat as well, so you can copy them there. And I want everyone just to be safe and to really practice good self-care. So thank you all for participating. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to my colleagues, and have a good night.
Thanks. Same to you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.